Welcome to day 3 of Natural Beauty Summit's Detox Your Beauty Regimen series. I'm Salome Sallehy, founder and president at Sugar Wax, a clean beauty company. And I'm thrilled to share with you today my interview with Environmental and Social Responsibility Director at Credo Beauty, Mia Davis. For those of you that might not be familiar, Credo has often been referred to as the Sephora of natural beauty products. They have an extensive set of requirements for brands, and they also have systems in place to take the guesswork out for their customers. Now, those requirements were mostly created by Mia, who can only be described as a natural-born environmentalist with a proven track record of consumer safety advocacy. When I started out in the beauty space with Sugar Wax, I learned very quickly that there really isn't a set of standards for cosmetic, beauty, and personal care products for health or safety. And furthermore, there isn't even really a governing body to oversee and make sure that beauty brands are being safe and using safe and clean ingredients. As long as you're not making any drug claims, your products fall outside of the FDA's realm of governance. So it's really up to beauty brands and retailers to define what clean beauty means to them and set those standards for themselves. In this interview with Mia, you're going to get some insight on how Credo Beauty is working to keep toxic ingredients out of their products and ultimately protecting their customers. Hi everyone, I am here with Mia Davis, Director of Environmental and Social Responsibility at Credo. And
Suitable for life. It's most of our practices that are extremely unsustainable probably are rooted in thinking that it's out there and that we're separate from it, and it's something that can be exploited when the relationship between human health and community health and wildlife and ecosystems is completely interconnected. So, I did start thinking about toxic chemicals in the environment probably at an earlier age than most people, because I was thinking about not just pollution coming from smokestacks and kind of going out there, but like landing back into communities, and also pollution even from like aerosol hairspray. So I'm 40, so I'm just old enough to remember like people using products that were all, you could smell them, you could hear them, you could taste how toxic they were, and highly flammable. And I was, even as a kid, like, that doesn't seem quite right that we're purchasing these things and bringing them into our home. And then I think, the more that I read and studied and really devoured the work of Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring, and started to think about the connections there of, spraying pesticides on our fields and wildlife, not being able to exist because of those chemicals, and how, those chemicals are also used in Agent Orange. They're also used in weapons of war. And now, post the Industrial Revolution and post World War II, Rachel Carson taught me and others that the industry that were making these chemicals, these petrochemicals, needed a place to put them. Like after war, they had all of this stuff and they needed a place to put them. And they started to make plastic, pesticides, fertilizers, and some of the other chemicals that ended up becoming modern chemistry, and the world made better through chemistry. And certainly, no doubt, there's a lot of conveniences there, and there have been some, developments that have been pretty amazing, especially when you think about, medical devices. But too often, a lot of these chemicals that do hurt the environment and hurt people make their way not just into the air, into groundwater, and as pollution that we more traditionally think of, they make their way into our products. And so that is like the macro view that I kind of have been going down that that rabbit hole of research and just awareness and working with environmental justice activists that are on the front lines of this in places like Louisiana and Texas, Bhopal, India, really thinking about those very, very real impacts on human health and the environment, all the way to, hey, what's in cosmetics? Like, what's in the stuff that we love to buy and that is fun and that we take home and we put all over our bodies and our babies, and finding that it's not always such a long line between those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think it makes sense for our audience to understand a little bit of your role at Credo, because it's quite unique, and I don't think that a lot of other beauty companies or cosmetic companies are making room for that role. And the role that you play is so interesting. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing day to day and your
Yeah,
mission that's driving it?
yeah, for sure. I have a really great job, and you're right. It's big and it's multifaceted and it's awesome. And I hope more companies will be making roles like this, because I think it's extremely important for our shared success and for the mission. Um, so I'm, as you mentioned, the director of environmental and social responsibility at Credo. And Credo Beauty is a beauty retailer. They have brick and mortar stores, which right now are just starting to reopen since we're in the coronavirus pandemic. It's such a strange time. But they also have a really strong digital presence and a strong, online shop at credobeauty.com. And Credo was started by two Sephora expats who just really wanted to do beauty in a really fun, welcoming to all, very inclusive, cleaner way. And they started in 2015 with one of their main focuses was really the dirty list that they put together, which is a restricted substance list. So many brands have, free of list, dirty list, black list. That was kind of still relatively new at the time, and theirs is pretty robust. They put it out there, and then when I met them a couple years later, or when I met Annie Jackson, one of the co-founders who's still COO, her other co-founder unfortunately passed away not long after Credo started. But Annie and I, when we met, we hit it off right away. She's extremely authentic and really mission oriented. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing to really operationalize this for the brands beyond just having a restricted substance list? How do you define clean and make sure that that is really meaningful for your partners? And she said, yeah, we need to do that. We've been thinking about that. We've all, we're doing it. We're growing really fast. We're a small, lean team. We need somebody that can really focus on that. So I came on board to do that a couple of years ago. And I have helped the company define clean for them, which is for us, and for all of our brand partners. And we, encourage anybody to adopt this definition or have a healthy, like, positive dialogue about what might be missing from it if it needs to evolve. For us, clean is the nexus. I think of it as like a Venn diagram, right? We made a Venn diagram to describe clean because I'm a little bit of a geek, but I love I love the visuals of a diagram. So we see clean in the center of these overlapping orbs of ingredient safety or product safety, sourcing. So safety is about risk, right? Can the ingredient cause harm? And we're talking really at relevant levels, mostly. But what is its hazard? Source. Is it natural? Is it synthetic? Is it naturally derived? Most ingredients in our space are in clean anyway, are naturally derived. And so what is the source? We just need to be honest about where the stuff is coming from. The next orb down here is sustainability. So you can have a natural ingredient that might be also safe that isn't sustainable, right? And an example of that would be palm oil. Palm oil is really safe, and actually you can get a lot of yield from palm. So it could be grown sustainably, and it could be a really great ingredient for our space. But unfortunately, so often it's grown on plantations that are clear cut, absolutely wreaking havoc on the local environment, forced labor, unfair labor wages, huge carbon footprint, slash and burn, displacing ecosystem or displacing wildlife. I mean, it's horrible. I don't think that the answer is to not have palm oil. I don't think it's going anywhere, and I think it could be a good ingredient. The answer is to drive the market towards sustainable palm oil, right? So it's just kind of a segue or an example of like why sustainability matters. So we have safety, sourcing, sustainability, and then ethics. So this one is a little bit harder in our space right now to really get into because it's much murkier, but it's really important that it's there, because I would argue that you can't have a clean ingredient or a clean product if there was child labor involved, or if the people who were growing it were exploited in some way, right? Or if the ingredient, this wouldn't happen at Credo, but like if it's a skin lightening ingredient that implies that there's only one way to be beautiful in this world, and that's a Western white way, right? That would be unethical. Obviously, animal testing and animal rights comes up a lot in the ethics bucket. So, as I said in the beginning of this part, it's not that like every single ingredient or every single product can check all those boxes right now, but we have to be asking those questions, and that's how we have to define clean, or we're not going to really get anywhere, right? And we're surrounding this whole orb of these or overlapping Venn diagram orbs, right? Is transparency. Because if we don't have greater ingredient transparency, like for example, full disclosure of fragrance ingredients, which I feel really strongly about, or just greater understanding of where your ingredients are coming from, how can you know about safety or sourcing, right? If you don't know about the feedstock of the ingredient. And if the supplier comes back to you and just says that it comes from a plant, okay, well, you know, what plant? Like,
Yeah.
is it from soy? Is it from maize? Is it genetically modified? Like you need to start asking these hard questions. And transparency has to be there, or we're not going to really move the needle. So I defined that. I helped to define that, and then even more importantly, operationalize it, right? Because it's great if I have this like hot little Venn diagram, but if nobody knows what to do with it, and if our brand partners aren't getting some best practice tips and working together to move the industry in the right direction, then we're not walking the walk. So that's really the next piece. I've also been working a lot on sustainable packaging, and other what I think are really cool and very important initiatives to make sure that clean is meaningful.
Oh my gosh, you covered so much there, so much, and it's great. So just to clarify before I move on to the next question, your role is not only to create this definition and in a way standardization, but also work with brand partners to ensure that they're meeting that criteria. And I mean, I don't want to make it sound like you're policing it, but you are a little bit of an enforcing body, which
Yep.
is so rare. I mean, it seems like so common sense because I feel like that's what everyone should be doing. And I think consumers expect the FDA to do that. But
Right.
there's a lot of products and FDA is kind of limited in, well, I won't get into the FDA discussion because that's
Yeah.
a whole can of worms.
Super limited, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely limited and they don't have that ability. So every
Right.
brand really does need to have, some sort of standardization in place because
Yep.
otherwise we don't know what we're getting.
No, that's right. And even for the example of the restricted substance list, in Credo's case, the dirty list, um, if you don't you can work with a contract manufacturer and a chemist and say like, hey, I can't have any of these ingredients in there. But if you're not doing the due diligence on the other stuff, first of all, some of those ingredients very well might sneak into your product. So don't don't make any assumptions. You need to get the certificate of analysis and all these documents to make sure that those free of ingredients really aren't there. But then it's so much more important, or not more important, it's equally as important to go beyond that and to say, okay, what do we know about the ingredients that we are using, right? So it's great to not use parabens. Yeah, don't. But then what do we know about these other ingredients? And if the up and down the supply chain, if that transparency isn't there and if brands aren't asking hard questions, we're not going to be moving the needle. So right now, companies don't have to, chemical companies that are making these ingredients, they don't have to tell you if it's been linked to cancer or reproductive toxicity or if it's ever been assessed for safety at all. They don't have to tell you that it's not just from a plant, that it's from genetically modified soy that was grown wherever. Like none of this stuff is required. So until as an industry we make it the status quo, we have to push them to give us that information so that we can be making better choices as a retailer, as a brand, and then as consumers, right? We know consumers want this, but it's all in how you ask the question. And that's what we're trying to do. So yes, I'm definitely an enforcer, but we truly would see it more as a partnership
Yeah.
because we can't, we just have to all do this together. It's not gonna, we don't have the bandwidth or the the power as any one entity. So yeah, it's about a partnership. But to get to your point, if a brand were not complying with the Credo Clean Standard or now the new sustainable packaging guidelines that I just released to the brands, I mean, if there's a really genuine reason, like they can be like, look, I've been moving forward, trying to meet your 50% recycled content by 2023 milestone, but for this type of material, it's not going to happen. And here's my years, thread of emails and phone calls of trying to work with these suppliers. We would work with them to come up with a solution. But if there's like not interest and the brand just doesn't care about sustainable packaging, then they're not the right partner. And they shouldn't, in my opinion, be calling themselves clean.
I actually really appreciate that you touched on that, because one of the reasons why our ramp up for Sugar Wax took so long was because of the sustainable packaging. Like,
Hard.
just getting into this business, you realize that m- not only are plastics like the standard, but like most of those plastics aren't even recyclable,
Yeah, it's
which
true.
is insane. And anyway, so it is
Hard.
not, it's like the retailer, it's the brand, it's also the suppliers
Yeah.
that is now starting to change and recognize sustainability and clean as a real mandate. Now,
Yes.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the consumer, because I mean, before I was in beauty as a consumer, it was really, really overwhelming, because you're like, okay, like plastics, the environment, ingredients, microbeads, this, that. And it's like, I want to be healthy. I want to eat clean. And if I'm eating clean, it only makes sense to like use products that are clean and create an environment that's also free of toxins. And it could just get really overwhelming.
Yeah.
But you've been doing this for so many years, and I feel like you've got some good tips. Like, where does a person start?
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, the educating yourself is important, but like, I don't want to have a PhD to just be clean and safe and
Yeah.
non-toxic. So,
Right.
what does that journey look like realistically?
Yeah. And you're totally right that it can feel overwhelming and not everyone has access to the same products and not the same products work for everyone. And some things are priced really at a rate at a level that is way too high for some people. So I also want to underscore that you do what you can with where you are and also that we can't just shop our way out of this problem. There's a lot of work that we need to be doing as consumers and as brands to just not think like, what do I consume that will just be better or will be the fix, right? So just feeling the need to say that.
Yeah.
But you're right that you shouldn't have to have a PhD to feel confident in what you're eating or putting on your skin. And I think of, you know, we started the conversation by talking about environmental health and, you know, the very real fact that humans are a part of the environment, especially if you've ever had a baby, right? You grew that thing. So if you did, unless you adopted it, somebody grew it. And the first environment was the human body. So what you put in your body matters, and your relationship between you and the environment is transient and fluid. And to the extent that you can reduce your exposure to toxic chemicals, that's only a good thing. We have a lot less control over our groundwater and what's in our air, right? But we do have more control over what we choose to eat and put on our skin. So one thing that I think is important for people when they're thinking about where to start is, um, what do you, first of all, just the most basic consumer level, what are you running out of, right? Or what do you use the most of, or what are you not happy with and you're looking to replace? So obviously I'll talk about beauty because that's what we're talking about. But if you're running out of something, that's a great opportunity to start to look for a cleaner swap. If you see some ingredients that are commonly on a free of list, there's probably a good reason that they're on a free of list. So maybe it's time to move on, away from that product. I also feel strongly about fragrance disclosure, and doing your best to avoid undisclosed fragrances because um, you've seen, I'm sure a lot of your viewers know this, but some may not, and it's important to share, I think. If you see the word fragrance on an ingredient label, it might be a couple of natural constituents or essential oils, but it could be dozens or even hundreds, more likely dozens of undisclosed ingredients. They might be perfectly fine. They might not be, but you don't get to know. And I think that that sucks. Like, why not? I think that the time for that loophole, like trade secret idea, is long gone. So, um, think about what you're running out of and replace that. Credo offers clean swaps, which is a really cool program, and they're doing it online digitally too. So if you're like, yeah, I'm about to run out of face lotion and I wear it every single day and it really matters, or I need a new sunscreen or whatever it is, you can go there and say, here's what I like to use before, but it isn't quite clean. Do you have anything comparable? Like, here's what my skin is like, and someone can help you find the right product. I also think, you do what makes you feel comfortable, and you don't need to overthink it or become obsessive, right? If you highlight your hair, if you like wearing fragrance, like not every day, but maybe on Fridays, or like if and when we go out again, we go out to dinner again someday, like, you know, do that. We don't have to become, it's not all or nothing. It really is about reducing your exposure to toxic chemicals, to chemicals that have never been assessed for safety, which is most of them, by the way, or just kind of simplifying and having products and things that are multitasking. That's the way to go. Don't drive yourself totally nuts because stress is toxic too.
Absolutely. So I want to go back a little bit to the work that you do with brands. Um, what are some of the most common misunderstandings that you come across, both from the brand side as well as consumers?
Mhm.
And we were talking about this because I think a lot of us are well meaning, but not everyone understands things the same way. So can you talk a little bit about that? What are some like common misunderstandings?
Yeah. So one common misunderstanding that I see is that the idea that what you put on your skin should be like extremely simple. You should be able to eat it. Okay. So for food, I'm also like very into food. I do think that avoiding processed foods as much as possible, avoiding preservatives in food makes a lot of sense. Can't always do it when you're on the road, when you're doing, whatever. But for home, as much as you possibly can, eat fresh or frozen foods. Fresh is better, whole foods is better. For skincare, it's the same rule doesn't apply. It's a completely different method of exposure, and the way that you are interacting with those ingredients is different than if you ingested them. Also, we expect skincare products to hang out in like bathroom cabinets where it's damp and warm. We expect them to have a shelf life of a year or more, 2 years. So you need preservatives in basically anything that contains water. Because if you have water and you have all this like delicious proteins and peptides and things in the product, it's going to grow yeast and bacteria and mold. So one of the perceptions that I've heard is, if you wouldn't need it, don't put it on your skin, or preservatives are bad. That it really isn't the case with skincare, and I think that that's one that we need to shine a light on it, because bacteria, yeast, and mold are also, they're not only like yucky and not desirable, they could potentially be a health concern as well. That's a big one. I think another one is that, you know, first, the natural means natural. Sometimes it doesn't. And that natural is always, safer or more sustainable. And we talked earlier about that palm oil example of a very pertinent, extremely relevant for our industry example of why that isn't always the case. I think most of the time, a natural or naturally derived ingredient is going to be more sustainable and probably safer than a petrochemical, because synthetic and petrochemical, that they're basically the same thing. Most synthetic chemicals are made from feedstock that came from oil or gas from the ground. So it's non-renewable, really messy. The other chemicals are used in the process. It's very energy intensive. Carbon footprint is huge for anytime you're pulling up fossil fuels, right? And there's a host of other problems too. Those are just some of them, but not necessarily. They're not, it's complicated, and that's why I really like that Venn diagram approach to defining clean and saying we just have to be honest, and we should be empowered by the complexity, not overwhelmed by it, I think.
That's a really, really good statement. And I
Thanks.
think it really feeds into the purpose of this summit is to empower people with the information so that they do feel more empowered rather than overwhelmed.
Yeah.
To wrap, can you share with us now, just so you guys know, Mia does some master classes around clean beauty. And if it's okay, I'd love to include some of those links.
Yeah. It'd be great.
Um, can you share one takeaway from your classes that you have found have made an impact? Something that people can do right now to just get one step closer to a cleaner beauty regimen?
Yeah. I think maybe I give you maybe two tips, one on packaging and one on ingredients. So on ingredients, or on what your next purchase might be, I think about the things that you use the most often and or on greater surface area, right? Like if it's a body lotion or a face lotion that you use every single day, I would say that if it feels really important to me to seek the cleanest formula that you can there. And again, and that it's probably not going to be preservative free. If it's a face oil, maybe, but not if it's a moisturizer, like a cream. And that's okay. But at Credo, I think we've done a really good job at saying we don't have fear of preservatives, but here are the preservatives that are on the dirty list that we will be avoiding because there is reason to suspect that they could cause harm even at low doses. So we're going to skip it. But here are some that we do allow, and really working with brands that are very conscious about those formulas. So smarter, like cleaner swaps, I think is one important take home. And then the second is around packaging. So as I said, we just released the sustainable packaging guidelines for our brands, for all 135 of the brands, with some pretty it's both best practice, like here's how to choose safer, more sustainable packaging, and here's how to design smarter so that we're designing for like refillable packaging instead of just disposal. But also some concrete goals like no more single-use masks and wipes. Done. Getting rid of them. They're just inherently unsustainable. I know they're convenient. I know they can be great, but they're just designed for the landfill. We can't be designing that way anymore. So done with that in 2021.
Thank you. Can I just underscore that for a second? Because I think there's a lot of misinformation about wipes. And as a mom who, went through the whole baby thing, also, like, even the ones that say flushable,
Yeah.
they don't biodegrade. I don't know who came up with this idea, but there was a huge study done about how they coagulate in the sewer systems and they don't biodegrade. We won't get into it, but really, like, ditch the wipes, people.
It's the
Not
way.
that hard.
Yeah, and I just picked that one to go through first because it's the first deadline. But we have other deadlines in the sustainable packaging guidelines. So go online if you want to learn more and geek out about that. But the reason to answer your question, I was going to say that a really important take home that I talk about in master classes and that I really want to convey with this audience is not a lot of stuff is recycled. It's a horrible truth, and don't shoot the messenger because it's really depressing. But when you see the plastic number and like the recycling triangle arrows, that does not imply recyclability. And there's so much stuff that's used in our industry that is not made out of plastic that will be, or even glass that will be recycled. So this is going to be a longer, harder conversation that we need to have, but I want to make sure that people aren't doing something called wish cycling, where they use their product, finished up, and they're like, I don't know if this can be recycled. I'm going to throw it in my blue bin, because it actually contaminates the recycling stream and makes the system even more broken. Um, so I have a blog that I just wrote about this, and I'm talking about it more. We are seriously at a tipping point with plastic waste in this country and escaping into what's getting shipped off to other countries, and it's escaping into the environment. And it is a real tragedy that we have to do something about. So I'm proud of Credo for really taking a huge industry leading stand on this. And I think and hope that a lot of other companies in our space will be too. Hopefully, partnering with us. Because again, Credo has 130 brands and we're growing, but we're tiny compared to so many others out there. We really hope that the standard that we've put out there that there will be a lot of Me Too, that there will be a lot of adoption of that. It's not proprietary. We're hoping that it's inspiring and that others will join, because that's how we're really going to make change. I mean, that's what we need to do. So that would be my other take home: is beware the packaging greenwashing, try to dispose of it properly, and try to reward the companies that are making really much more sustainable decisions with your dollars.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mia. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
So nice talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.